Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to Monday, June 20, 2022, Currituck County Board of Commissioners meeting. At 4:30, we have a work session to discuss the school passage for the Tulsa City Elementary and further discussion on the county's budget. At this time, we're going to call the meeting to order, and our first item is the vacation of pledge of allegiance and this evening on behalf of the legislature.
I would be happy to. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Lord, I thank you for this wonderful evening, this wonderful week. Father, I thank you for this wonderful place to live. Lord, I lift up our first responders this evening. And Father, I know they've had a week. And Lord, I pray that you continue to protect them in and about the county and about the county's business. Father, I pray that you give us wisdom this evening, Father, as you already have, Lord, as we consider the financial responsibilities of this county. Lord, as we examine the budget and we ask the questions that need to be asked, Father, I pray that you would give us favor as we continue those discussions. And Lord, as we come to a resolution as to what the budget for Currituck County will be for 22-23. Lord, bless this evening. Give us wisdom, Father. In Jesus' name I ask. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Beaumont. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move item A, consideration of the adoption of the county budget for next fiscal year, to Monday the 27th at 6 p.m. Mr. County Manager, that would affect every other area of adoption of the budget as well, would it not?
That's correct, so I would recommend for Tourism Development Authority, Ocean Sands Water and Sewer District that you would also continue.
Okay. So also move the special meeting of the Tourism Development Authority's budget award or presentation and a possible adoption, and Ocean Sands as well to that same day.
Second. Any further discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the public comment portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity for citizens. We give 3 minutes to come up and discuss anything you'd like to the county commissioners, good, bad, indifferent. Any comments, anything you'd like to say? Uninterrupted time, and you'll see there's a green light up there. It'll start when you start your comments. The yellow light will let you know you got about 30 seconds to try to wrap up your thoughts, and then the red light will let you know to please start concluding your comments. And the first person we have signed up is Tamron Kugler. If you could come up and state your name and address for the records, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Tamron Kugler, and I live at 103 Charleston Drive in Grandy, and I'm the Tourism Director for Currituck County. I just wanted to let everyone know that Currituck County applied for a public inclusive art project with the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. And what we're looking for is to create a statue or a monument to a man named John Jasper White, otherwise known as Currituck Jack, who was an enslaved sailor during the Revolutionary War period. I'm pleased to say that we were awarded a semi-finalist grant, so we now have from now until January to go out and gather all of our information, gather everything that we need to submit for a grant in January. So I just wanted to let you know it's such an honor that we've been selected for this. So I'm just very pleased and want everybody to know. And we will be having a series of community meetings where we'll have the public come in and talk about how they envision this monument statue. How do they see it? Where should we put it? And all those different kinds of things. So we're looking at probably 2 public meetings with the community and a 3rd meeting with the artists that we select to do some renderings for us. So here we go. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. All right, I have no one else signed up for public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in public comment that did not sign up for? If you signed up for the public hearing, you do not have to sign up for the public comment. But is anyone who wishes to speak in public comment this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to our commissioners' report this evening. I'm going to start off to my right, and Commissioner Owen Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank our tourism director, Tamron Kugler, for the event that they put on Saturday at the historic Jarvisburg Color School. And it was well attended, and it was a great history lesson given by Dr. Harold Barnes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Owen. Commissioner McCord.
I would also like to thank Tamron, but I was not able to attend that event on Saturday. I got to work 13 hours in Kerala on the beach, and the four-wheel drive section, it was a busy day. But I was in Kerala last week 5 times for the sheriff's office, and I visited Whalehead Wednesday. After we had a commissioners meeting that night, my son drove me over in the boat, and Whalehead Wednesday was packed. I mean, it was busy. And everybody looked like they were having a good time. Her staff, they just do a great job. We have a lot of other Grayson County employees that just do really, really wonderful things. And her people, I've witnessed it at Bulls and Barbecue, at other events. You got some dedicated people. You're very fortunate. So I just want to kudos to her and her people. Like I said, you couldn't have put maybe a few more people out there in the open area. It was busy. Getting to busy. Kerala's busy. It's very busy. Traffic's busy. Everybody's going to the beach. They love that sand. But like I said, so be careful on the roads. We're still having fires. Law enforcement's busy. EMS, everybody's busy. It's been hot. We've had some super hot days, and it's not even summer. Stay hydrated. Drink plenty of high-quality H2O, and I guess as the water boy would say. But that's pretty much it. Like I said, just the county, we're busy. I mean, like I said, and it's everything. We got a lot going on, a lot of good things. Like I said, so people should be fortunate of all that we have and that we provide in the county, and just keep it up, everybody, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Commissioner Court, and Vice Chairman Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first thing I'm going to touch on is something that Kevin kind of alluded to, and that's has to do with our guests in Kerala this past week, and I'm using that term kind of affectionately. The unruliness that was reigning in Kerala, it is out of control. It is as bad or worse than anything as a youngin' growing up around Daytona Beach and Fort Lauderdale. I have multiple reports of households that have 30 kids and 1 or 2 adult chaperones in them, far exceeding the capacity of the houses. And I know we've had discussions about house capacity, but I think we really need to look at what potential enforcement there is, because clearly these houses are not rated for that level of population. I know the Sheriff's Department had some help from out of the county helping with those enforcement actions, but we are a family-oriented resort community, and that was not evident last week. I'm talking, I personally saw 30 to 40 kids at night blocking the road, not allowing vehicles to go past. That resulted in 1 arrest alone in just that one event. That's unacceptable, and we need to look at ways either to advertise such, Tamron, we can blame Outer Banks all day long, and those that watch that show ought to go to South Carolina where it was filmed and, take your hooliganism there. The second thing is, and Kevin alluded to this as well, let's talk about a week in the life of fire EMS. There was a structure fire that was a total loss in Jarvisburg, I believe.
No, Harbinger.
Harbinger, my bad. By the time fire got on site, it was already through the roof. So thank God I don't think anyone was hurt in the fire itself.
Just one
but that wound up being a massive response. Mm-hmm. We also had an ambulance, I believe it was early Wednesday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, was hit head on while driving a 5-year-old autistic child that was having an asthmatic attack to the hospital in Outer Banks. They were hit head on by some younger individuals, the driver of which had fallen asleep, that actually caused our ambulance to roll onto its side. Thank God, the injuries were fairly minor, but the driver of our ambulance had to be cut out of that ambulance in order to get out. And then finally, to cap the week off, and it's been a while since we've heard about this, we actually had an aircraft that landed, and its gear wasn't down when the fire department got there. So as to what happened, unknown, but it's not often that an aircraft bellies itself in at the airport, and that, of course, provided other interesting challenges. So, you know, when we lift up fire and EMS and law enforcement and anyone else that's in the public safety business, their lives are at risk every time they roll. And it you know, from some of the most bizarre directions it can come. I mean, who would expect to hit an ambulance head on with the lights going? I don't know. But keep them in your thoughts and prayers. I know I'll go ahead and, deflate some of Commissioner Payments. You know, please, if you can, volunteer. We are always looking for staff. We're always looking for help. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Can I add, Mr. Chairman, can I add, I wasn't going to bring up the numbers. And Alcohol Law Enforcement Agency, ALE, assisted. We had a sting on Wednesdays and Thursday night due to complaints. Wednesday we had 14 of us, and then Thursday we had 12 of us, additional units with them and us combined. I believe 70 people have court in Currituck County from that, and I don't have the total numbers, but I think it was 107 charges just in those 2 nights. So it was pretty busy.
And that included,
I was there at both of them.
And that included adults contributing to the delinquency of minors by buying alcohol and giving them to their young adults to drink. So,
and that included businesses too, were charged.
And many businesses.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Beaumont.
Always a ray of
There you
sunshine.
go. Yes, okay. Well, as you can see, the county's summer season is here. We are busy. Friday, I had the pleasure to attend an event, the 4-H district, the Northeast, actually the Northeast District 4-H Activity Day, which is on speech presentation that they were doing. It was a speaking competition. I was able to talk to some of the individuals and welcome them here on behalf of the county, and that entailed 22 counties. We had some of the students anywhere from 5 years old on up. Some of them drove over 4 hours to get here. And it was held at the Currituck County Middle School. And it's been almost 20 years since the county has hosted that event, and it's probably going to be another 20 years since we host it again. It was the first time that they had this in public since COVID. So they were excited. Last few years it was done virtual. So they were excited to get out there. It was a good group of people. I think it was around 170 individuals here. But I just wanted to thank the volunteers, our 4-H, the schools for allowing the school to be open for this event. It was well received, and I talked to some of the people outside, and they just said, what a beautiful county Currituck is. They saw the new buildings coming in of the aviation over there. They said this was a great looking county, and they were glad that we were able to host it this year for them. So just wanted to pass that along, and I believe we had a lot of our local participants win gold awards there. So they're moving on to the next level, and congratulations to everyone out there, and thank you again. And as far as the fire departments, I'll say it again, you're right. I mean, the volunteers work on a volunteer basis. So, they have jobs, they have things going on. So it's hard to, they don't just sit at the station hanging around. So they have to leave their jobs, or when the page goes off, they have to do what they can to get the apparatus rolling. So the more volunteers, the more help we can get, the better we can do to help support our citizens out there. So try to get involved, do anything you can. They would very well appreciate that. And that's all I have this evening. Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks, Paul, for stealing all my thunder for Corolla. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
So I'll jump in a different direction. So the chairman always mentions that we have a work session before we start our meetings. And tonight we've had several budget work sessions over payroll between the Sheriff's Department and our county employees. And it's at times spirited, so it is enjoyable though, and that's what is supposed to happen there's supposed to be lively discussion. And so these are open to the public. I've said it for the last 5 or 6 years I've been up here, but if you want to know what's going on and how the money's being spent, these are open to the public. And I realize people are working and maybe can't come here at 4:30 in the afternoon, but I would encourage you to. We'll be meeting next Monday again, probably around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and then looking to adopt the budget at 6 p.m. With a special meeting. So that, again, will be open to the public, and if you want to hear some of that discussion, please do so. Drop in. It also affords you the opportunity to talk to us. When we step out of those work sessions, you can talk to us and bring up concerns or ask questions about what we were talking about, what we were working on, or anything else that bothers you. So I would just encourage people to come and show up to the meetings and talk to us and hear the discussion. I again will commend the Sheriff's Department. I talked to Kevin. He ran out of here after a work session last Wednesday, another budget work session, to go spend, 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, Wednesday night? Yep. And on top of his day, his regular work day, he went and did that. And with a bunch of other deputies. And ALE was in town as well, helping work side by side with the Sheriff's Department. And it is weird that somehow Currituck became the new beach week place for graduating high schoolers. Who wants? I went to Myrtle Beach myself and snuck into a hotel when I was a teenager, but but it is an oddity that we saw this year that we've never seen before. The number of teenagers that were there raising Cain and jumping out in front of cars. A friend of mine owns a bait and tackle shop. Him and his wife are driving home. A bunch of kids are standing on the side of the road, and they decided to jump out in front of his F-350 and film it for TikTok. I don't think we can. I don't know about this generation. They may not survive. I mean, that is just about the dumbest thing I could think of doing. And if he hadn't have been paying attention, it had been a long day, it was night, it was dark, he could have easily plowed over a couple kids. So parents, do something with your kids. I don't know. It's just crazy.
Parents be parents.
Yeah, parent your children. And then lastly, of course, we talked about Tamron and her staff, but I do miss doing the Cork and Craft Wednesdays at the Wellhead Club. I used to participate in that. I had a craft beer store, and we would come over there, and it was a lot of fun, good music. And as Tamron would normally say, it's not her, it's the people that work under her that make her look so good. The dedication and the hours they put in is to be commended for certain. They work hard. It's hot. It's buggy. It's a lot of work, and they always pull it off every week, week in and week out for our tourists. So thank you again to her and her staff. And that is it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything tonight except to tell people, with it being summertime, make sure you put on your suntan lotion, because after our work session last week, I had to go to Durham to have a little surgery done. So make sure you keep that suntan lotion on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Etheridge. Commissioner Jarvis.
Thank you. I don't have much. First of all, on June 1st, our home delivery Meals on Wheels program went to 5 days a week. All of our senior centers are struggling to find volunteers to fill 1 hour of your day, Monday through Friday, to brighten a senior's life. I would encourage you to call 252-232-3505 to volunteer and give back. In that same vein, I just want to thank our volunteer firefighters who showed up to my neighborhood to fight the fire in a home of one of my neighbors. It was a hot day. The response was, as best as could have been expected. A lot of the deputies also showed up to help. It was a team effort. And no one lost their lives, but I do feel for the family who did lose pretty much all of their possessions, so keep them in your prayers. And finally, be careful out on the roads. It is a daily struggle to be safe out there. People driving aggressively in a hurry because the beach might disappear if they don't go 80 down the highway. So I would say, be defensive. You live here and you are used to the roads, but there are a lot of people driving down the roads that have many other things besides safety on their mind, so just be careful out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jarvis. And now we get to the highly awaited county manager, county attorney report.
Just one thing, I will get the details to you, but I was informed by our Public Works folks last week that Currituck received a recycling award, I think for the top recycling program in the state per capita. So, yeah, which is interesting since we had some issues with recycling in past years, but I'll get more information to the board about that particular recognition.
Maybe it's a valiant effort recognition.
Yeah, maybe so. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, county manager. Okay, that takes care of the county manager's report. Our next item is public hearings, and item A, let me get my glasses on, is BB 22-08 Baxter Station preliminary plot / SUP request for 80 lots located in Moyock on the south side of Baxter Lane, adjoining the railroad right-of-way to the west, tax map 9, lot 25A, Moyock Township, and this is a quasi-judicial hearing. So I'm going to ask anyone who's going to be testifying or providing evidence this evening to please come forward. And I think we have some Bibles up there. If you could raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. Got everybody? We got everybody. We got. No. You can share. You can share Bibles. There you go. Do you swear the evidence that you present tonight will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. Okay, before we get started, before we get started, if I could just ask the county attorney, it's been a while, it's just to remind the audience out there about a quasi-judicial, how the board has to respond and what kind of evidence we can receive, just to kind of give them an update again on how we're sitting at this board tonight.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, by the very fact that you just swore in persons who may provide testimony to the board, this proceeding is somewhat different than people may regularly see you when you sit in a legislative capacity. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding in which the board sits essentially as a court, and you must make your decision tonight based only upon evidence that's presented to you in the course of the hearing. That evidence cannot be hearsay. For example, that means someone can't present to you a letter, a petition, or some type of written document and ask the board to rely upon that as evidence in making your decision, because unless the drafter or writer of that particular document is present and may be examined or cross-examined by the parties participating in the hearing. Our general statutes also provide that you may only consider certain evidence from experts. You cannot consider lay testimony or persons coming before you who give you speculative evidence or assumptions that's not based upon expertise, training, and education. In particular, that is that you may not consider evidence related to whether the use of the proposed use of the property will have a negative impact on the value of adjacent property. That testimony may only come from an expert for you to rely upon it. Likewise, with any claim that there may be some traffic issues or impacts that may come from the proposed use of the property, that testimony must also come to you from an expert for you to consider it in your findings of fact. And then lastly, this, in order to protect the due process rights of the applicant, there is a requirement that this basically be conducted much like a trial, meaning that the applicant has the opportunity to present their case and their evidence, that the board has the opportunity to examine the applicant and their witnesses, that the applicant has the opportunity to cross-examine any person who may come forward to present evidence or testimony in opposition to the application. So those are the basic tenets of the proceeding that you are entering into now.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation, and I'll turn this over to our Planning Director, Kevin Kemp.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Kemp, Development Services Director here for the county. I will be presenting this case and going over the county's staff report for it, As you mentioned, the application is for an 80-lot subdivision in the Moyock Township off Baxter Station Road. I think, do we have the, are you seeing the slideshow up there?
No, we're seeing you.
All right, well, the slideshow is much better looking, so hopefully we can get there.
Well, we're moving along.
All right. There we go. So this will help you orient to the site. It's shown here in blue off Baxter Road. It's to the east of Currituck Highway, pretty much across from Town Bank. We zoom in a little here. You can see it is a field just south of a newer development, Windswept Pines. It's 53.5 acres of land that's currently undeveloped and has been farmed. As a result of a rezoning you considered November 1st, 2021, the site is now zoned CMXR, which is a conditional mixed residential. The MXR district is designed to accommodate a variety of residential uses with communities that are well-designed neighborhoods and use creative uses of the open space. The site is designated as a full-service district in the 2006 land use plan. This is an area where the county does provide a broad range of infrastructure and services. When it comes to residential density, the consideration is 2 units per acre, but could be elevated to 3 to 4. In the Moyock small area plan, it is also designated as full-service district, the same as it is in the 2006 land use plan. It's an area of higher activity where infrastructure is available. The densities considered range from 1.5 to 3 units per acre, and it encourages a high level of architectural elements and creative site design. So here is the site layout. To go over a few elements, we'll use this. As I said, the site contains 80 lots. The lots range from 15,000 to 19,500 square feet. There in the bottom of the slide, you can see a typical lot. It is 150 feet deep by 100 foot wide. The house is in the front with the septic field in the back. The community is intended to be a 55 over age-restricted community, which I'll talk about more in a few moments. It has 20.4 acres of open space, which equates to 38%. It is more than 30% that is required. You can see a large portion of that open space is the water feature along Baxter Road. Amenities in the subdivision include a community park, which you can see right in the middle, a dog park at the rear of the development, and street line trees and sidewalks that run through those community elements. In developing this plan, the developer has 2 specific goals outlined. The first is to build an age-restricted community with an attractive design and open spaces designed to enhance stormwater management. The second is to make improvements to the existing drainage situation along Baxter Road. The project will be constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 will be 41 lots. The second phase will consist of 39. An analysis of the proposed and existing infrastructure shows the development meets county standards. I will review stormwater, transportation, and wastewater in a little more detail later, but just to go over briefly some of these, the development is serviced by county water. It has a connectivity score of 2, which does exceed the 1.4, which is required. This is largely due to sidewalks on both sides of the street, 2 entrances, and connectivity to the neighborhood to the rear Hidden Oaks. The design of the homes is consistent with what was approved in the rezoning application in November. One of those elevations, I believe there were 6 of them, but one of those is shown there on the slide. A Type B requirement, Type B buffer is required and will be installed along the southern and eastern property lines. And lastly, the developer will pay just under $54,000 payment in lieu of parkland dedication. The developer held a community meeting on March 22nd at Moyock Library. 9 people were in attendance. The major things discussed were drainage and traffic, which tend to be consistent themes for any development in this area. Schools, the covenants of the community will restrict living, all residents in the community to 55 and older. So it will lessen the impact on schools. If those covenants were ever removed, the community right now would be slated to go to Moyock Elementary and Moyock Middle School. As you're probably aware, both of those schools are at capacity. However, there are additions to those schools in the works, and a new school, as you discussed, being built for the 2025 school year. For stormwater, it is acknowledged by the county stormwater manager that this is a low area, and it also generates a lot of complaints. As such, the developer has agreed to take 6 steps to alleviate and better the drainage improvement. The first is that they will improve the Baxter Lane ditch. Improvements include widening, deepening, laying back slopes, and putting it in proper grade. This will all be done prior to phase 1 of the development. The second is an easement will be provided to give access for maintenance. The third is in the covenants, the HOA will be responsible for ditch maintenance through the development. There will also be a funding structure put in place to make sure that this is always can be maintained. The fourth is that this is modeled after the 100-year storm. Any berms or additional design to accommodate that will be added. The fifth and sixth are contingent upon obtaining right of entry for properties further down Baxter Lane. You can see in the pictures on the right of the slide, the applicant will replace 2 undersized culverts, which will improve downstream drainage, and our stormwater manager agrees that this will improve the stormwater for the area. The roads will be built to NCDOT and fire standards. There will be 2 entrances. The main entrance will be directly across from the entrance of Windswept Pines. There will be a second entrance located further east down Baxter Lane. This is required by the UDO. Lastly, there will be a connection to the Hidden Oaks development to the south of the neighborhood. Wastewater, all these lots will be served by private septic. Albemarle Regional Health Services did send a letter July 15th, 2021 that said the soils are unsuitable for conventional septic. As such, the applicant will take these steps here shown on the slide. 24 inches of sand fill material will be needed. This is consistent with what was done on the other side of the street. There will be the large ditch along the highway will require some cleaning. The septic systems will need to be backfilled and installed in accordance with the submitted drawings, and all lots will be required to join a public management entity and inspected at least annually. As a result of the rezoning in November, this project is consistent with both the 2006 Land Use Plan and the Moyock Small Area Plan. Proposed density of 1.5 units per acre falls within those plans. TRC reviewed the plan and says that it has demonstrated the proposed use will meet special use permit standards and has 2 outstanding comments. The first is that the developer should have a updated conversation with our stormwater manager regarding the fixing of the culverts downstream or down Baxter Lane. And the second is that if the development ceases to be an age-restricted community, that they would need to come back to this board for approval and modification of that condition. So the board today can act in one of 3 ways. They can adopt the special use permit, they can adopt it with conditions, or they can deny. The review standards are listed here. The proposed use will not endanger the public health and safety. The proposed use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands. The proposed use will be in conformity with the land use plan and other official adopted plans. and it will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate infrastructure. So those are what you'll be looking at. You'll be hearing from the applicant, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Kemp, one quick question regarding the age restrictions.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarity purposes, definitions, that would be anyone living in that development?
Yes, sir. The way it was told to us by the applicant is that the covenants, and they are private covenants, but the covenants will restrict that anyone in the community has to be age 55 or more, that the ages of the residents will be checked every 2 years, and then it would be a private enforcement if that were not found to be the
So
case.
based on that definition right now, that means there would be no impact to the schools at this point?
The way we understand the covenants to be written, no one under the age of 55 would reside in the neighborhood.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
You mentioned, and it's also on page 55 in the packet, or excuse me, page 8, the covenants could be changed. What does it take to change the covenants?
To change the covenants, to change the actual covenants would be a private matter. As far as it goes, as far as this board goes, they would need to come back before the board to amend this preliminary plat, should it be approved, conditional use permit.
So there's
to
no
lift that, it would
standard.
need to be removed.
There's no standard or code that says everybody in the subdivision has to agree 51%, so it's just up to whatever the covenants are written, correct?
Correct. I think that the applicant and their attorney could speak
Okay.
more towards how the covenants are written. From a county standpoint, we would just require that it comes before this board to change that requirement.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question. I was looking through the packet, and at the community meeting, it was the question on page 139, what kind of homes will be constructed?
Yes.
And it says new floor plans will be developed because there will be a different market. But when this was approved with conditional zoning, on page 43, it has the houses, and it's got that they were approved to be similar to that. How much leeway do they have with how they could modify houses? Because in the conditional zoning, the houses I thought were approved.
Yes, the house elevations did get approved in the conditional rezoning process. They were presented by the applicant and were part of that approval process. Leeway, meaning leeway in design, size. We would look at what they submitted as a staff to see if it was in substantial conformance to what was approved. It's difficult to give a defined answer of, what could change, which
And
would trigger.
most of the homes were like 4 and 5 bedroom homes, according to what was approved.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Kemp, so if they had a craftsman-style home that was a 4-bedroom home, they decided to go to a single-level 2-bedroom home that was in the same vein, a craftsman-style home, would that fit substantial change? Or, I know you deal with this stuff on a regular basis as a planning director, so if they come in and it's basically the same style of home, but they've changed the number of bedrooms, is that still substantially conforming with?
Right. Most of the time, what we look at when you have elevations that they turned in would be the aesthetic nature behind it.
Right.
Sometimes there will be conditions attached that, say, have a minimum or a maximum square footage or bedrooms. In this case, the rezoning did not have that. It just gave these
Style.
kind of broad picture of what the style would be. So we would look at it more from an aesthetic standpoint. We would look at, a lot of it would be the architectural detailing of the homes.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Any other questions for Mr. Kemp? If not, thank you, sir. And I'll ask the
Sir.
applicant then if they'd come forward, please.
Thank you.
Again, just state your name again if you could for the records.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. I'm Jamie Schwedler with Parker Poe at 301 Fayetteville Street here on behalf of the applicant North-South Development. Mr. Kemp did a great job in explaining this request, and the staff report is very well written, and so we'll try not to belabor the points tonight and lead you through the witnesses as well as the standards relatively quickly and then be available for questions. We'll prove each of the 4 elements that Mr. Kemp went over by competent, substantial, and material evidence with 3 witnesses tonight. Mr. Bissell will begin, a professional engineer, to address factors 1, 3, and 4 on conformity with the land use plan, not endangering the public health or safety, and the ability to provide adequate public facilities. He'll be followed by Mr. Aaron Goodman, CEO of Goodman Management Group, who will address factor 4 with respect to the impact of this age-restricted product on the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, and explain based on his experience how these restrictive covenants are enforced with respect to age-restricted communities. Finally, Hunter Howell, a licensed North Carolina real property appraiser, will address factor 2 related to the impacts of adjoining property value and harmony with the area. To streamline the presentation, we've once again prepared affidavits with exhibits, and then if I could hand those out, the witnesses will walk through those and instruct you to turn to relevant exhibits as we go. We'll try to get through all of the questions in the way that we prepared, and if we haven't been able to address something, please remind me and we'll make sure we address that. Okay. At this time, may I approach and hand out the exhibit notebook?
Yes, you can.
If there's next.
Kevin's got one. You've got one, Kevin.
This time, I'd like to call Mr. Mark Bissell as a witness. Mr. Bissell, will you state your name and address for the board, please?
Mark Bissell. My office is located at 3512 North Currituck Highway in Kitty Hawk.
And can you please describe your background and experience to the board?
I'm a professional engineer. I have a degree in civil engineering from Duke University. I'm a licensed professional engineer in North Carolina. I've been practicing around the state for over 40 years now.
Thank you, Mr. Bissell. At this time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to tender Mr. Bissell as an expert in the field of civil engineering and layout design.
Any objections from the board? Hearing none, thank you, yes.
Mr. Bissell, can you explain any materials you prepared to explain this project to the board, please?
Right. I'm the lead engineer for this project, and I've overseen the layout and the design of the plans that are the subject of the special use permit. I did prepare an affidavit with several exhibits that I'll further illustrate in a PowerPoint presentation here. The affidavit contains the overall preliminary plat submittal. What we're looking at here on this slide is the general layout sheet for the project. As Mr. Kemp indicated, the parcel is zoned CMXR, and we are proposing 80 age-restricted residential lots on the south side of Baxter Lane, with a residential density of just under 1.5 units per acre, which is at the low end of the suggested range in the land use plan. The next 3 or 4 slides are from the master plan that was approved in November and just illustrate some of the amenities and benefits we're providing, as Mr. Kemp indicated, street connections to Hidden Oaks to the south and door connections to Baxter Lane. We also have 38% open space, which is about 20 acres compared to the 30% required. And that actually has enabled us to do some greater than normal design effort on the stormwater management for this project. But we do have an attractive entrance proposed at the west end, and we're going to try to emphasize this entrance, which is the one across from Windswept Pines, to minimize the amount of traffic on Baxter Lane farther east. The dog park We'll have some nice landscape buffering. We'll also contain the community mail area. And adjacent to the lake, we're going to have a nice garden area with benches, probably a fire pit, areas for lawn games, gardening, etc. These plans comply with the UDO provisions. We've gone through several rounds of review, and there are no open issues related to the compliance with the UDO standards, as shown on Exhibits C and D to my affidavit, which are the TRC comments and the responses. So as Ms. Wiggler indicated, all units are restricted to occupants 55 years of age and older, with a recertification every 2 years and enforcement. We've committed to making drainage improvements, and Mr. Kemp did go through these 6. I won't repeat them again, but I will kind of describe how we're implementing those. So this shows graphically the improvements that are being proposed to the Baxter Lane ditch. The area with the red arrow is the area that abuts the property that will actually be cleaned out and laid back, and an easement provided and funding provided for the ongoing maintenance of. There are, and I'm going to jump ahead for a minute just to show you, we actually have completed the survey work along and downstream of that of the property, just to find out, what the condition of the ditch is and what are the obstructions to good stormwater flow. And we identified, in addition to the undersized culvert that we already knew was at the end of the road, which is undersized and in an improper grade, we identified a second culvert that's undersized that also needs to be replaced. So we had committed to, if Currituck County is able to obtain the necessary right of entry agreements, the existing undersized culvert, which is the one to the far right of the screen, will be replaced with a properly sized culvert set at the proper grade. And in addition to what was agreed at the rezoning approval, the second culvert that we identified will also be upgraded if Currituck County again can obtain the right of entry agreement, and we understand that right actually has been granted, so that culvert can be replaced with a properly sized culvert at the proper grade as well.
Mr. Bissell, is it just one or both culverts?
Both culverts.
Both? Okay, thank you.
And sorry, who knows whether or not that's been granted or not?
Well, I'm not under oath, but
on
we have identified the owner of that right-of-way. We also have a water line that runs through that area, which is another question, how that even was placed there without a proper easement. The owner has indicated or stated a willingness to provide the county with an easement. It's just the necessity of drafting the easement and getting it to the owner.
Thank you.
Both locations.
As our county.
Well, no, for one across.
And that's our county attorney talking.
Yes.
From discussion with Dylan Lloyd, he has been given at least a verbal approval to do the other one.
Thank you.
Who? Well, that's if he needs to come out and verify it.
So in connection with that culvert replacement, and these are additional conditions that the staff had recommended that were adopted as part of the rezoning, we would be lowering that water line at the end of Baxter Lane, of course amending the zoning if the age restriction ever ceases. And there was a question about that earlier. I just kind of want you to understand the difficulty of that process. If the zoning were ever to be requested to be amended to remove that condition, it would be essentially starting over from scratch. We would be filing a new application with a new pre-application conference, another community meeting, a TRC review, actually 2 TRC reviews, a hearing before the planning board, and then a public hearing before this board before anything could be changed. So
That's before
That's before the
Construction.
amendment, or before the age restriction could be amended from the zoning, as a
By the
zoning
developer.
condition. By anyone.
It might help to turn to Exhibit B in Mr. Crystal's affidavit that had the conditions for approval of the zoning case. And we can walk through what the existing conditions are now, and that might help to illustrate what Mr. Bissell is talking about.
This is in our agenda packet.
Sorry, no, it's in the notebook that we handed up, the
Yeah.
conditions of approval also. Yes.
Also on page 31 of your
Yeah, 31.
agenda package,
Right, exactly. So the same language appears on both. Mr. Bissell, you were involved in the rezoning of this case, correct?
I was.
Okay. Could you read out that first condition of approval that applies to the zoning for this property?
Regarding the age restriction, the use of the property shall be limited to an age-restricted residential community where all units are occupied by all occupants 55 years of age or older. No one under the age of 55 years old is permitted to live in the community. Before the issuance of the first building permit for the first dwelling unit, the developer will record a restrictive covenant in the HOA documents restricting the use accordingly, requiring occupants to certify the age of all household occupants at least once every 2 years and providing an enforcement of such restriction.
So, based on your experience with zoning cases and civil engineering, that zoning condition requires the use to be restricted to those
It
55
does.
years
That
old.
runs with the land.
So is that what you're referring to, that we have to start the zoning over if we change that provision?
It is.
Okay, and that's in addition to the restrictive covenants?
It is.
Mr. Bissell, do you have any knowledge of the restrictive covenants as now? Have you guys put that book together, basically, the rules regarding that?
I don't, but
'Cause, one of the questions was how easy it would be for the HOA to change.
I mean, I understand
Right.
the agenda packet and the conditions of
Right, but-
approval. My question relates to, once it's turned over to the HOA, that's what I asked Mr. Kemp, what does it take to change this 55-plus community to just a regular housing development?
well, the HOA would have the same procedure as the developer to change
Well,
that.
some HOAs are tougher than others. For instance, you need 90% of the homeowners to approve a change to how, that's I think probably that's what I'm interested in, and possibly Commissioner Jarvis as well.
But wouldn't the HOA then have to go through
Right, if
TRC and
right.
planning
So-
and rezoning? And
So if the HOA says, okay, we want to pursue a regular neighborhood, we're going to amend our restrictive covenants, then they would have to, they could do that, and then they have to come back into us, though, for changes to the use permit.
So ballpark a cost on that to bring the expert witnesses
Right.
forth in order to be able to change that over.
It's going to be several $1,000s because even if they
Several
were
thousand?
several thousand. I said,
Yeah.
Don't let Justin hear, because he's going to be really pissed.
several.
7,000.
Many thousands of dollars.
Rezone the property first, and then they'd have to go back through.
So my point is,
And then they have to go through this process again for the
Right.
special use.
So the board would, if the board rejected it, then they'd never be, even though they wanted to do it, they
It doesn't
couldn't
matter.
change it
Right.
then.
If they tried to do it rogue, they'd be issued a zoning violation by the county,
Well,
whoever he or she may be.
okay.
So, and we do have another witness to talk about the age restriction and how that's
Okay,
typically
okay.
enforced, so there might be,
All right.
that might be better answered.
Okay, thank you, okay.
Thank you.
And then the last question was to amend the property to the full-service classification in the land use plan. This has been accomplished. So the way that we're meeting the drainage agreement is that we have performed a survey of the drainage, existing drainage conditions, and we actually have performed the modeling of the 100-year, actually we modeled the 2-year, the 10-year, and the 100-year storm event. We are in the process of designing replacements for those undersized culverts, And we have preliminary designs for the ditch and for additional stormwater storage on site. And I wanted to...
So, Mr. Bissell, I'm sorry to interrupt. You said you've begun, can we go back to slide? Or there. So the design for, do you have an idea of what the replacement culvert is going to look like size-wise compared to the one that exists?
We believe it's going to be 60-inch,
And what's there right now?
48.
Okay. And there'll be two?
And there are two 48-inch pipes that are restricting the flow because there are 60-inch culverts that are feeding those pipes.
Got it. And they're high, so it's really not operating as a 48-inch.
And the one that is situated on top of a water line is at the wrong elevation because they can't get a depot up without replacing the water line.
Okay, so since we're on the ditches, I'm just looking at Exhibit C with the NCDOT comments. Review, the maintenance divisions must review and approve ability to maintain improvements to the Baxter Lane ditch within NCD right-of-ways, and then a hydrology study may be necessary for the same ditch. Are those being done? Are they going to be done?
I've discussed that with David Otts, and he has indicated that DOT will accept the stormwater modeling that was done.
And that's in here somewhere that he's accepted it?
No, he hasn't reviewed it. He knows the model that we've done, he knows how we're doing it. And prior to the issuance of the application for construction plan approval, he approved it.
Okay.
So what I want to illustrate here is how the proposed ditch and pond improvements will function. Right now, what happens during a major storm event is the Baxter Lane ditch actually overflows into the farm field, and this was brought up at the community meeting. And there was concern about, are we going to lose that storage? Well, so the elevation of the farm field is approximately 7.5 feet above sea level. What this is illustrating, we've taken a section through this. I don't think this has a pointer, does it? Yeah, it does.
Well, we can't see it.
You can't see it. I can see it.
You can get around here and point to it.
Right.
the mouse and
Yeah, just move the mouse around.
Or climb up on the table.
Right.
There you go. Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
here
You
we
can
go.
see that.
Okay. So what you're seeing at the bottom of the page here is a cross-section that's drawn through the middle of this pond, coming across the street, coming across the pond. So what you have is Baxter Lane here, and then the widened and laid back Baxter Lane ditch in this area, and then you have a low berm here, and that berm has an elevation that's being set at that same 7.5 foot elevation. So what will happen is when the Baxter Lane ditch fills up, it will actually overflow into the new stormwater pond. And that's where that 38% open space is coming in handy, because we have a tremendous amount of storage now available. We're really setting the bottom elevation, the control elevation at 5.2, so we've got all this storage between 5.2 and 7.5.
Is the intent that it actually overflow the berm?
The intent is going to be to overflow the berm, just like it does now. Well, now it doesn't without the berm. It's just it just kind of overflows when you get beyond about a 2-year storm. So once the ditch is improved and the pond has been constructed, and we've done this modeling, the effect is going to be that for smaller storms, we're actually lowering the hydraulic grade in the Baxter Lane ditch. For the 10-year storm event, we're again lowering the hydraulic grade in the whole ditch system. And with the 100-year storm event, neither the flow rate nor the hydraulic grade of the water are increasing. So this design meets or exceeds the conditions that we agreed to regarding stormwater.
What's the advantage of overflowing the berm rather than like a spillover?
What we're trying to do is not force more water downstream during that 100-year storm event than goes downstream now.
Okay.
We're trying to hold it back and then gradually meter it out over time.
So you're not concerned about the small swale going into the pond as much as the pond going into the swale
Yes,
in major storms?
right. So the way this pond has been laid out, it accommodates that 100-year storm event.
Okay.
It takes all the water that the ditch can't handle, basically. The other infrastructure is kind of outlined here. Potable water will be supplied by Currituck County via an existing 8-inch main on Baxter Lane, which will be looped back to North Heritage Tree Manor through Hidden Oaks. So this looping will improve water flow and pressure to the adjacent communities and will provide adequate fire protection to the site. We will, of course, be modeling that water system and the fire flows at the next stage of the approval process. As Mr. Kemp indicated, the Albemarle Regional Health Services has evaluated the 80 lots and approved the type of design for all of those lots and established criteria for the development of each lot. You have a letter from Ralph Hollowell to that effect in your packet. Transportation was addressed in the plans with the main subdivision entrance located or connected to Baxter Lane across from Windswept Pines and the secondary entrance farther east and then connection to Hidden Oaks to enhance connectivity and traffic circulation, as well as providing improved pedestrian interconnectivity and access between the developments.
Biss, before you get too far, back to the septic system.
Yes.
I'm just looking at too that it says the site would need 24 inches of fill. You mentioned earlier it would need to be done at the same as the property located across the road. Which property are you referring to? The development across the road?
He's referring to Windswept
So
Pines.
it's going to be, you're going to develop at the same height? Is that what
It'd be a similar arrangement with fills and drainage.
all right.
Yeah, and this design that, actually this design here, the elevations that are being used in this plan accommodate that 24 inches of fill, and it'd be typically a 30-inch fill then to the first floor of the building. And then the periphery of the site will be bermed to contain that 100-year design storm on site. So the roadways are being designed in accordance with DOT standards, including the right-of-way and the roadway design. And based on my experience and on the input we have received from DOT, the improvements will mitigate any impacts by the new development, and the use will not endanger public health or safety. As we discussed at the rezoning, there is a strong demand for housing in Moyoc that keeps increasing, and there's also a need to meet the housing needs of an aging population, which this project is intended to do. At the November 1st zoning hearing, the board determined that this is consistent with the land use plan, consistent with the Moyoc small area plan, compatible with existing Moyoc subdivisions, and in keeping with the change conditions acknowledged by the small area plan, and addresses a demonstrated community need of providing a full service area, and is consistent with the UDO. It is compatible with the surroundings, the surrounding development. It's basically an infill development. If you look at this exhibit, you can see that Baxter Station is situated right here in between Hidden Oaks and Winslet Pines, and essentially completes the undeveloped land in this part of Milliok. The lots are set back and buffered from Baxter Lane and buffered from the highway. And the plans and uses are consistent with the policies of the 2006 Land Use Plan, including the policies identified as AG6 and HN1 regarding density for infill sites, and policies WQ3 and WQ4 regarding stormwater management. There should be no adverse impacts. Again, we're going to manage the stormwater from the 100-year storm event using this oversized retention pond. We're improving the existing Baxter, that should say lane drainage. And this should not endanger the public health or safety. With the age restriction, which has zero impact on schools, and any other impacts are being addressed through good design. And I will be glad to answer any questions.
I just have a few catch-up ones for you, Mr. Bissell, if you don't mind. Based on the testimony you gave, is it your opinion that the use with the stormwater implementation will not adversely affect the public health and safety?
I do. It is, and I think it'll actually improve the health and safety.
Okay. And based on the Exhibit D, the TRC responses that you attached to your affidavit, is it your understanding that there are any outstanding technical issues associated with the plan?
No, I believe everything has been addressed.
And is that true with respect to any transportation review that the county has performed?
It is.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions for this witness and tender him to the board.
One question maybe for Mr. Kemp, or maybe Ms. Bishop. This would be the first 55 and older only community in the county right now, correct? I don't recall. I mean, well, the only one right now.
The first successful.
Yeah, yes, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Just curious if we had any other active ones right now, but this would be the only one right now.
My house is getting.
Okay, well, it's not yet, but okay. That's the only question. Any further questions for Mr. Bissell at this time? Okay, thank you, sir.
Just ask that Mr. Bissell's affidavit and attachments be admitted to the record, please.
Okay, no objection. Thank you. Yep, yes.
At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Aaron Goodman. Mr. Goodman, can you please state your name, address, and background for the board?
My name is Aaron Goodman. My office address is 249 Central Park Avenue in Virginia Beach. I have a degree in religion from Liberty University, and I've worked with community associations since 2011. I'm currently the CEO and owner of Goodman Management Group, which we operate in both North Carolina and Virginia, which I started in 2020. In the past 10 years, I've managed just over 50 of these age-restricted 55-plus communities, and the size ranges from 1,600 homes to 50 homes.
And are you prepared to address any factors related to the special use permit today?
Yes, based on my experience of managing age-restricted communities, I'm prepared to address Standard 4, whether the use exceeds the county's ability to provide adequate facilities.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to tender Mr. Goodman as an expert in the area of age-restricted communities and their impact on public facilities and surrounding infrastructure.
Any board objections? Okay, yes, thank you.
Mr. Goodman, can you explain the basis of your experience and the opinions that you drew from examining the project here today?
Yes, so the industry of community association management has safeguards when we have age-restricted 55-plus community. These measures and industry standards are regardless of the developer, regardless of the builder, regardless of the management company, because there's a very simple and clear-cut process that we all use to ensure that 55-plus communities, age-restricted, stay 55-plus as far as occupancy. These types of communities, they typically have restrictive covenants, which we've talked about tonight, which include the age restriction. The HOA will require occupants to provide affidavits verifying the age of the occupants at the time of purchase, and then this process is administered by a management company on a regular basis thereafter. The federal government requires that the association keep accurate records of age verification on file. An example is in your packet, Exhibit A, of an affidavit that we use for another age-restricted community.
And is that an example based on a community you've actually administered?
Yes, we're actually managing it right now. It's currently 200 homes. It'll be 1,600 age-restricted 55-plus homes when it's completed.
Can you explain for the board, based on that experience, how this restriction is enforced in real time?
Yes. So in real time, when the property is purchased, we work with the builder and the buyer to provide them a copy of the affidavit. They complete the affidavit, send in a copy of a driver's license, birth certificate, or passport. We log that in our system, and then recurring every couple of years, we also go back, use the same affidavit, same process, so that we can administer and create a record of all the occupancy in the community.
Great. And you were here earlier when Mr. Bissell talked about the impact of age-restricted communities on public schools, correct?
Yes. Okay.
Good.
There should be no impact because no one in the community should be a school-age child. In addition, these age-restricted communities, the nature of them will also have a lower impact on county facilities, much more than the traditional single-family development.
And can you explain why that typically is?
So most of these owners are either retired or kind of at the twilight of their career. Much less travel on the roads, especially during rush hour. I know if I could make my schedule every day, I would definitely not drive during rush hour. Usually, 1 to 2 occupants max per home. So less water usage, less use or demand on a septic system. Those type of facilities aren't impacted as much.
Thank you. Did you have an opportunity to review the specific restrictions in place from the zoning case for this project that limited the use to 55 years and older?
I did.
And in your experience, is that a typical age restriction that you've enforced over time?
Yes, it is.
Can you please explain to the board how the affidavit, I guess, is derived from the declaration? You had some questions about how easy it would be to just change the declaration, and can you kind of explain based on your experience?
So these 55 communities and the way they're set up, and everybody moving in who was over 55, convincing any majority of people who are over 55 then to turn it into a non-55 plus community, kind of counterintuitive. The way they're set up, both from the design of the neighborhood, the green space, but more importantly, even the social life of having social events geared towards how that community is going to function in that age. Any document amendment is usually difficult, but I think it would be hard-pressed to have any majority vote to remove the restrictions on the community that they've actually bought into that for.
And based on your experience, are those owners typically more likely to report apparent violations?
Yes. So typically the management company really doesn't know of occupancy outside of those affidavits unless somebody tells us. And so it is very common for those owners to report on their neighbors when they have suspect of a 55 plus or under 55 occupancy violation.
And then based on your experience, does the declaration typically have an enforcement mechanism at that point?
Yes, so the declaration is going to have the power to enforce mandatory fines and injunctive relief, and in my experience, usually the injunctive relief and the monetary fines is what brings folks into compliance if there's ever an issue.
May I ask a quick question on Exhibit B really quick then? The Exhibit B you presented here, one sentence says, notwithstanding the above at all times, at least 80% of the occupied dwelling units within the property shall be occupied by at least one individual?
That's specific to this neighborhood.
Okay, so
To a different neighborhood.
To a different neighborhood.
Okay, so the example you said, so this particular example would allow some children in it.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so the affidavit that we're discussing would be 100%. Okay. That's all I have there, thank you.
And Mr. Goodman, have you had the opportunity to draft the affidavit or create an affidavit for this particular case yet?
No, not yet.
But that affidavit would have to follow the restrictive covenants adopted for the community?
Correct. That affidavit, the example you have, that first long paragraph is pretty much taken right from the recorded declaration. So any requirements, both the zoning and that are in the declaration, would go into that affidavit.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask that Mr. Goodman's affidavit and attachments be entered into evidence as Exhibit 2.
Any objections from the board? Okay, yes, thank you.
And I don't have any additional questions for this witness in the time I have.
Well, I've asked my question, just regarding, I guess the affidavit then would be written specific to this at some point.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board at this time?
What's the percentage you think of, like you said, violations? And I mean, if somebody has, if you have 100 homes and they see a grandchild not for the weekend there for like over a month, I mean, do you get a lot of calls on violations in your other neighborhoods?
I wouldn't say a lot of violations, but that is typically the type that we get. Like I've seen the same grandchild there for 30 days. Typically it's in the summer too, when kids might be visiting their grandparents also. So very few violations, because again, the way these are set up, the owners who have moved into these communities want to maintain that structure 55 plus, because it's all about their social life at that point and their investment going forward.
Thanks.
Any other discussions right now? Questions? Good? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Howell to stand. Mr. Howell, could you please state your name, address, and experience for the board?
Yes, my name is Hunter Howell, and my office address is 412 East Chatham Street, Cary, North Carolina. I'm a professional real estate appraiser, and I work for Valbridge Property Advisors. I'm licensed by North Carolina as a state-certified general appraiser, and I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute. I'm working towards a MAI designation, and I've been appraising properties throughout North Carolina for approximately 8 years.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to tender Mr. Howell as an expert in the field of real property appraisal and impacts to real property.
Any objections? Yes, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Howell, could you explain to the board what you did to prepare for this hearing?
Yes, I was engaged to study the impacts of the project to the value of adjoining property and whether the project is in harmony with the area. I prepared a report and an affidavit explaining this report.
And can you walk through what you did in that report and affidavit?
Yes. So the report I prepared, in which I analyzed the effects of the proposed development on the surrounding area. This report is attached as Exhibit A to my affidavit. This included looking at the surrounding land uses and residential values over the previous 3 years to determine market demographics and trends, as you'll see on page 2. I also looked at other age-restricted developments in comparable locations in order to determine the effects of these developments in the area in which they are located. This method is called a match paired analysis. The report analyzed a 1, 3, and 5 mile radius looking at the population, housing supply, and household income data over the last 10 years with projections over the next 5 years. The population within a 1 mile radius has almost doubled since 2010 and is expected to grow annually by 2.4% over the next 5 years. The housing supply is also expected to increase at a similar rate. This indicates a strong and healthy market that is expected to have exponential growth over the next 5 years. We also analyzed the housing inventory and price per square foot over the last 3 years. There was a sharp decline in homes available in Moyock starting in 2020, with price per square foot increasing over that same time. This indicates that there's a need for additional inventory in the area. The past 2 years have also seen the average days on market for residential homes in Moyock drop drastically below 30 days, which is another indication the market is in need of additional inventory to keep up with this demand.
So in addition to general market factors, did you analyze how this proposed development is expected to impact adjacent properties?
Yes. So this type of age-restricted development proposed generally has a positive impact on surrounding properties. We studied several instances where age-restricted communities have developed adjacent to typical single-family residential neighborhoods with no age restrictions. We looked at 2 such age-restricted residential subdivisions in North Carolina and found that they integrated well into typical single-family residential neighborhoods. This is on page 9 of the report. The best example is the courtyards at Heritage Grove in Wake Forest, North Carolina, which is an 83-lot age-restricted subdivision surrounded by typical single-family residential neighborhoods when the development broke ground in 2018. The data shows that the age-restricted community did not have any negative impacts to the values of the homes in the adjacent Majestic Oaks neighborhood over the next few years. This project is similar to the 80-lot project proposed here. In general, as new residential developments come to areas, they enhance the surrounding areas positively in terms of property values. This has been seen in several instances across the eastern part of the state and formerly rural areas of the surrounding Greater Triangle. The demographics above indicate the area is growing at a rapid pace, with real estate prices increasing as a result. In order to keep up with the influx of people, this area will need additional housing. The design of the proposed age-restricted subdivision allows for a moderate increase in residential supply and a new type of housing product.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Why did you choose the Heritage Grove project as something comparable to the proposed project?
Yes, so it had a similar size and number of lots. It is located on the outskirts of the Triangle, and the Triangle is a growing area. So Wake Forest was formerly a rural area and has started to see increases in population similar to Moyock. So I thought that was a good comp to kind of use to make a comparison.
Thank you. In your opinion, is the proposed development in harmony with the area it is located?
Yes. We evaluated similar developments in the immediate area to determine if this project is cohesive with the development pattern. This is on page 4 of the report. We identified 4 similar subdivisions in the area, recently developed or approved and under construction. Based on the range of 0.89 to 2.14 units per acre in the developments we identified, the 1.49 units per acre this project provides is in harmony with the surroundings and uses. It is also similar to the size of other projects in Moyock, including Lakeview at Currituck and Glenmore Ridge. The project is expected to integrate seamlessly into the surrounding existing traditional single-family neighborhoods. Based on this analysis and report, I found that the proposed will not injure the value of adjoining and abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. At this time, I'd like to admit the affidavit of Mr. Howell and the exhibit, his report, and the evidence is Exhibit 3.
Any objections from the board? Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay.
No additional questions for Mr. Howell?
Yeah, I do have a question for Mr. Howell. Yes. Based on your analysis, when you said the growth and the population in the future and all that, do you take into consideration the interest rate hikes that are going up and the conditions that we're in right now with the economy and all that? Is that factored in with still people think it'll be aggressive buying homes with the inflation getting ready to hit, or well, it probably has hit us now?
So the numbers for population growth, whenever this analysis was done, that was about the time they're starting to hike. So these predictions are still kind of in line with it. They might be a little bit more moderate, but a lot of investors and indicators are still saying it's going to be a hot market for the foreseeable future, as long as nothing crazy out of the ordinary happens.
Have you seen, like in previous developments, like where, I mean, for like a 55 and older, for something where you might have a lot of, and I know you're not in the lending end, but maybe like cash, I mean, like somebody who's retired, who's 55, who's, they might have sold a house somewhere and then pay cash for this house for no mortgage.
Exactly. So that happens quite a bit. So, especially with 55 and up, it's going to have less impact with interest rates and things like that. A lot of cash, with the older, they're ready to retire, they have
a mortgage.
And then no mortgage, so they can't do that where younger can't.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Here now? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Howell.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask the presentation and staff report, the agenda, and all materials be admitted into the record for this evening.
Okay. Any objections on that? Nope. Okay. Thank you. We will.
Thank you. And based on the testimony you heard tonight, we've offered 3 expert witnesses who have offered competent material and substantial evidence with respect to the 4 factors that are required per your UDO. that the use permit will not endanger the public health or safety. Mr. Bissell testified as to the layout, the technical review, the stormwater and drainage, and all of that has been reviewed by your staff, reviewed by the relevant experts on your staff, and as well as DOT and other oversight agencies. Mr. Bissell testified there are no outstanding issues except for those two conditions that we were asked to consider. We did consult with the applicant, and the applicant is willing to accept the two conditions, which is, I believe, to further the conversation on the stormwater issues and work with Dylan Lloyd on that, as well as the condition with respect to the age restriction. I'll get into that in just a second. Mr. Bissell testified that the layout, the internal street network, fire and safety have all been reviewed, and there are no outstanding issues with respect to public health or safety or adequate public facilities. Because this facility or this residential neighborhood is age restricted, it is guaranteed in the zoning conditions and then in belt and suspenders with a restrictive covenant that no children of school age, much less anyone under 55 and older, can live here. And so by default, in order for us to have a zoning compliant development, we would have to make sure that it's restricted to persons 55 and older. But then with the special use permit, we've also agreed to monitor that and record restrictive covenants and monitor that each 2 years. We are intending to engage with Mr. Goodman, who offered his expert testimony that based on his experience, that these types of age-restricted communities do not generate any children of school age and so do not have an impact on the schools. And in fact, in his opinion, these types of age-restricted communities that are required, not just age-targeted, but age-restricted, have less impact on the roads because of the travel time. Folks have more time because they're usually retired or in the twilight of their career, and so they have an overall less impact on their surrounding communities. That factored also into factor 2, that this use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. You actually heard from 3 different witnesses that talked about that. To an extent, Mr. Goodman talked about how this age restriction tends to kind of have a lower impact on the adjacent properties. Mr. Bissell testified as well that these types of properties have they're comparable, they're not as intensive use as other types of properties, and of course the expert opinion, Mr. Howell, doing the match pair analysis with the age-restricted community in Wake Forest that's comparable to this type of area, rural but developing, and when he looked at the sales of homes that are adjacent to age-restricted communities over time, it didn't injure the value of the properties, and so that satisfies the factor number 2, not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands, and will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. Mr. Bissell testified as to factor 3, that this plan is in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plan. This board changed the full service designation and 2006 land use plan when it adopted this case in November of last year, and so it's in conformance with that plan as well as the policies that Mr. Bissell stated. And then finally, not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, not limited to schools, fire, and rescue. Mr. Bissell and Mr. Goodman testified with respect to schools, and then, of course, with respect to the other public facilities. Mr. Bissell also testified as to the way that stormwater would be managed and the way that the septic would be run, and which each of which would be adequate, whether they were public or private facilities. And so based on that testimony, we have provided all of the necessary evidence for a competent material and substantial evidence for each of the 4 factors. I know that the age restriction is a new type of development here, but you've heard from 3 witnesses tonight, one of whom has administered this exact type of neighborhood throughout North Carolina and Virginia for over 10 years and knows how the enforcement mechanisms work. And I'd like to just remind the board that that's not just one enforcement mechanism or 2, it's actually 3. You heard the zoning condition, which requires this use in order for it to be operating as a residential neighborhood. The zoning condition requires it to be 55 and up. And then the zoning condition requires this restrictive covenant to be recorded. So we've got this private enforcement by by the developer and the HOA, enforced by the actual occupants to say this has got to stay this age-restricted community. Mr. Goodman offered his testimony that in his experience, the neighbors themselves that are subject to that declaration are very unlikely to change their investment. They wanted to be in this neighborhood because it's 55 years and older, and so very unlikely that they'd come back and try to change it. But even if they did, they'd have a management company to contend with, they'd have their neighbors to contend with, and they'd have this board to contend with, because they'd have to come back and change not only the zoning but the special use permit in order to be able to operate. So based on the expert testimony you've heard tonight, that risk is relatively low and the enforcement mechanisms are appropriate such that the permit should be issued. I'm happy to answer any questions tonight and will remain available.
Okay, board, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. It's not for Jamie, but for our stormwater manager. I believe when they were talking about the second person, I don't know if he was sworn in or not.
You got sworn in, correct, up here earlier? Were you sworn in when we've sworn everybody in? I don't think you were sworn in, were you? Well, yeah, if you need to for your testimony, then come forward. Get a Bible if you could.
I just had one question.
Up there, I think. Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, ask your question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the county attorney / county manager said the one that we had the one improvement. No, there was a second party, which I know you've been working on that. Do you have improvement or permission, I should say, as far as the drainage improvement on that property?
Yes, we did go over the first one, and as the county manager mentioned, we are getting that in writing. It's just a matter of drafting it up. The second one is 278 Baxter Lane. It's a similar situation. There's a little bit of a gradation and sizing problem there, especially with the drawdown of that ditch. And any type of minor little impairment or impediment gets in the way, it's going to affect everything up the line. So his name is Mr. Roy Cartwright. Mr. Roy Cartwright is an easygoing, informal man, and he gave me verbal permission months ago, and I had to talk to him recently. He's kind of hard to find sometimes, but I got him on the phone just today, and tomorrow I'm going to go visit him and get him to sign this right of entry and then hand it over to whoever I need to hand it over to. So, we brought this up because he also borders the Windswept Pines property, which is another matter. But, so I've had to speak to him again about some other drainage improvements we're doing in the area, and he's given me permission.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious if that was...
Just for the record, could you state your education or background in stormwater, just for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Dylan Lloyd. I have a master's in environmental science from Florida International University, and I operate, employed by Currituck County as a stormwater manager.
Okay, and I guess, and then I'll just ask the applicant's attorney, would that be acceptable? Any comments? Okay, do you have any follow-up questions regarding his comments?
I don't.
You're good? Okay, okay, thank you, Dylan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. I've been a while since I've been in one of these. Do members of the public get a chance to comment after this is over?
I've got a public hearing section coming up here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussions or questions for the applicant at this time?
I did have one question. I wanted to know if they have any idea how busy the market is for 55 and older. Is it a lot of people out trying to find communities like that?
Come on.
Ask Justin Old to be sworn in and testify to that.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, sworn in earlier.
The
Yes,
simple
you are.
answer is yeah.
Okay.
Simple answer, yes, okay. 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 Any other questions from the board? Okay, if not, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing portion of this meeting, and the individuals have signed up. I believe they signed up and they were the witnesses, but I'll go through them, and if you don't need to come up, that's fine. The first I had is Jamie Schwedler and Mark Bissell. Good. Aaron Goodman. Okay. And Hunter Howell. Good. Okay. I had no one else signed up that was sworn in. Is there anyone that would like to speak that didn't sign up? If you could please come forward. If you weren't sworn in, we got to get you sworn in, sir. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. If you could get your Bible, raise your right hand, put left hand on the Bible. Raise your right hand. Okay, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Richard Truan, and I live across from this development that you're proposing at 151 Baxter Lane.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just to reiterate, to remember that this board does have to, we will listen to your comments, but we do have to go by,
Thank you.
thank you. So go ahead, sir. But did you want to make a, yeah, go ahead and come on. Yeah, come on. I'm sorry. No. Come on, make your comments.
Go ahead, come on.
No.
Okay.
You're right. You're up.
I give respect to all of you, and I've been trying to fix this water problem from the very beginning. Y'all know that. And I give respect to all of you from my heart. But in my mind, I say, unbelievable. We still have a water problem that is not fixed. You see, one of the problems that I have is up on 168, you got one 40-inch pipe that runs underneath of that road into that ditch. From the development that they put in, you have three 28-inch pipes running into that ditch. From my property underneath of the road, from the water coming down plus water coming down from the road, you have another 45-inch pipe. And down a little further down the road from me, you have about a 10-inch pipe down there by Mr. Morales' place running into that ditch. So you got one 40-inch pipe running into that ditch. You got three 28-inch pipes running into that ditch. You got one 45-inch pipe in front of my land that runs into that ditch. And down the road, you got another 10-inch pipe that runs under the load into that ditch. And y'all keep talking about this pipe down the end of the road that's 45 inches. You want to make it up to 60? Where is the water going to go? When they built Windswept Pines, they put two ponds backed up to my land. And they built the brims up on those ponds for the other sides, but up against my land, they didn't build the brims up. At 4.5 inches of rain, I have both of those ponds overflowing the overflow and overflowing the brims of the pond going into my land. And there is so much water going into that ditch that I got the water from that ditch that is backflowing and coming up on my land. I have some pictures here. Would you like to take a look at them? These first three pictures These first two pictures is the water from that ditch at 4.5 inches of rain that is coming up on my land that is backflowing. That's the water from the ditch that is backflowing up on my land.
Do you have dates on those?
I just took these today. I got my receipt right here, sir.
And we'll get these pictures to the attorney
Now,
when we're done.
These next three pictures is from that pond over at Windswept Pines that is on my left-hand side. You can see the water that has overflowed that pond onto my land.
You got the shrinking chair?
And the next set of pictures is from the pond that is in the back of my land, which is overflowed the banks of the pond, and coming onto my land.
Sir, what I was asking was when were these? When were they taken?
I got the date on my phone. I can pull that up. I'll pull it up for you. Now, you see, the other problem that I have is, this water from this And these ponds that they built in the back, when they did the Windswept Pines development on the first phase of it, I said, this is going to work. But when they did the second phase of it, the ponds wasn't big enough to hold the water, and that's when all the problems came, because all the water from the roads was flowing into the ponds, and it was not enough. And the other question, I went back to Windswept Pines today, and I took some pictures from the ponds that has to get down to the road to see how they're maintaining the ditches. And I have to ask you, is once you put all this water into that ditch, who's going to maintain those ditches all the way down to the end of the road? These are the pictures from Windswept Pines from the water when it is flowed on out of the ponds that has to get over to the other side of that ditch. This is how backed up those ditches are with weeds. So now, not only do I got the excess water trying to flow out of the ponds, the water in the ponds has nowhere to go but on my land. Wait till I show my date on this phone here.
Let me get this, Carl, and then we'll bring you back. We'll bring you back up here in a second.
I'm going to show you, sir, because you're an officer, the date on my pictures for the water that you've seen was November the 12th, 2020, and the ones where you've seen with the roughage on it that was in the ditches, I took those just today. And the date on this is November the 12th, 2020. Young people may come in here and pray and put your hand on your Bible, but I live my life by the Bible. My wife just celebrated the other day 50 years of being a Christian, and my wife's a minister. I live my life by the Bible.
No, I believe you. I just was curious. I just want to show you. Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all the pictures you have there, sir?
Yes, sir. And
So,
No, thank you for.
well, I have a question for Mr. Chairman.
I know the problem's not going to be fixed. It never gets fixed.
Well, so you took that picture, this set of pictures in 2020, and have you had subsequent problems since that time?
Yes.
Okay.
At 4 inches of rain, okay, not only has the water overflowed, the overflow on the ponds, I've been keeping a record.
Okay.
At 4 inches of water, not only has the water overflowed the overflow on the ponds, but it's overflowing the banks. And these ponds are supposed to hold 6 inches of water. And I had Mr. Dillon up there, and I showed him when we had 4 inches of water, and he said, these ponds is supposed to hold 6 inches of water, but you're absolutely right. They're overflowing their banks onto my land at 4 inches of rain. And, you would think before you build another development that you would fix the water problem that you created until you build another development. I read a saying the other day that just popped up in my spirit. It said, never try to get a person that created the problem to fix the problem. And I said, boy, that makes a lot of sense.
Dylan, could you come on to the question for you then real quick?
Mr. Chairman, you may ask whether the applicant's attorney has any questions for that witness.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Sir,
Sir, you have to stay here for a minute in case the county attorney has a question for you. The applicant. I'm sorry, the applicant.
We don't have a direct question. It's really difficult to, determine when those pictures are taken or what was cleaned out before or after. So I'll just, have a general objection, but no questions.
Okay, thank you. I think, Bill, if you come forward, I got a question for you now.
Okay.
The gentleman stated you made a comment that those ponds were not holding the amount of water that were required. Is that what your findings are?
The ponds and windswept pines, the issue was on the backside of those, there was a key drain. There was an area called, there was a spillway when you exceed the county storage detention requirement, which is the 10-year, 2-year. That's what your design is based on. From an engineering perspective, and again, I'm not a professional engineer, but the ponds are supposed to hold up to that point at which you give them an area where they can overflow safely, where they can draw down. And his land is right behind there. There's a berm that was created around those ponds, and there's an area of seepage where me and the county engineer, Eric Weatherly, went, and you could see, and the first time I went there was February 7th, 2020. We had almost, I think, 6-inch rain in about a 48-hour period. It was a lot of rain. Second time we went was August, it was the 7th also, August 7th of the same year. We had another gully washer, and at the time, the ponds were high. It was beyond the, what a 10-year storm would be, and that's what they model these ponds for. And where the pond was overflowing is at this area that was kind of lined with riprap rock. Some people call it a key drain, some people just call it a washover, but it allows that water to draw down. And that area, it was flowing over into a system of ditches which were kind of interconnected to the old Truram property. Before any of this was built, it was soybean and cornfields. So the ditches were kind of hatched back and forth every 200 feet to take the water off the cropland.
Okay. I guess I'll ask, the applicant have any questions for?
Mr. Lloyd.
Okay.
Mr. Lloyd, you stated that these were the windswept pine ponds, right?
Yes.
Okay, not the Baxter Lane development that we're here about tonight, correct?
No.
Okay, and you also stated those pines were designed for a 10-year storm, is that right?
Yes.
And that's the UDO standard?
Yes.
Okay, so those ponds were designed in the manner that the UDO allowed at the time they were approved?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
The ditch that he showed us the pictures of, that not being maintained, so, as he said, is there a berm between that ditch and his property, or is it just level bank?
On the pictures, again, we're not talking about the ditch, just so I'm clear, we're not talking about the ditch that's associated with the development in question tonight, or the.
Right, this is the one windswept pines.
There was a berm designed around both those ponds.
I believe there's a berm.
But the ditch itself that goes out to the highway,
Mm-hmm.
is it just level off the ditch bank, or is there a berm there?
The one that goes out to the highway, there's not. The line, okay, north-south, going south to north. North is windswept, south is his property. There's actually two ditches. There's a ditch that lines his property that's contained on his property, and that's part of the old network. To the north, there's a berm separating his property and that ditch. Once you get to the north, where the ponds are, there's another swale that was created in conjunction with the neighborhood and those ponds that's supposed to take the spillage, the overflow. And a 7-inch rain, you couldn't really make out many of them at all. I mean, it just rises above everything. It doesn't matter if there's a berm there or not. You know, it's kind of a washout.
Hold on, sir. Hold on. Okay, the applicant, did you want to address his comments? Oh, come on up here.
So the ditch he was showing in those pictures is the main wet ditch going into Windswept on the left. His property is 2 or 3 acre lots away from it. So that ditch that you saw in the pictures isn't even near him by thousands of feet.
Is that the ditch that backs up
It's
to
the one
Ennis's properties?
Correct. Yeah, or the house beside. So it's Ennis's property, a house. Then that big wet ditch is what he was showing. And it's McCrary, I think his name is. And then, are you next to him? So regardless, there's 2 3-acre lots and an entrance to a subdivision in between that ditch he was showing in his house. So it's irrelevant to the whole situation. It's the one that catches the Williams track and everything and comes under the highway and then rides north and south along the railroad tracks, dumps under Baxter Lane into the proposed subdivision Baxter Station.
So if you,
They have nothing to do with him.
That's where they put the new culvert down about a year or so ago.
Exactly. It's
So
up
if you
north.
come in-
It's north, or I guess it'd be west, almost to the Highway 168.
so if you come into Windswept Pines, you turn in there.
One on the left.
So one on the left, not the one he's.
No, it's
oh, the
right
right-
near him. I mean, 6 acres away from it.
Okay. So come before you had another comment then?
What he's trying to say is, that picture of the ditch really has a lot to do with my land, because the ponds that is back up against my land, the water from the ponds is supposed to go somewhere. And the water from the ponds that's there runs into that ditch and goes under the 3 culverts that they put there for Windswept Pines to get over to the other side of the road. But I'm trying to tell you, if you don't have a clear exit for that water to get out of those ponds where all the ditches is filled up, that's going to affect me, because where the water has to go over and back, and the pond's over here, the water can't get out of the pond fast enough to flow down that ditch because it's all grown up. That ditch isn't up against my land, but it's affecting the water that's in the pond, because the water from the pond has to flow down that channel of that ditch.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
you.
Yes, sir.
I feel like I'm getting some respect. I'll respect
Yes,
you
sir.
a little more, okay?
No, thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
we appreciate it. Any more questions from this board? Okay, did the applicant have any, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Bissell, Mr. Bissell, since we're talking about this stuff, and you love this area, I know you do. You studied this area quite extensively. I think you've talked about it when we talked about Windswept Pines. You've been here other times when people have come in and talked about it. Is it your contention when you guys, if this project's approved tonight and you make the improvements to Baxter's, to the ditch that's adjoining your property, that it will greatly improve the drainage on the opposite side of the highway? Everything's getting dammed up basically in this ditch that's occurring east of where your proposed development is.
Well, it is. The Baxter Lane ditch is a constriction. Mr. Truran mentioned the 3 pipes, that are actually 3 36-inch pipes that come under Baxter Lane there and feed that ditch. And I have seen that ditch, and I suspect that the pictures that he took in November, I think it was of 2020, were taken prior to that ditch being cleaned out, because I went out and actually observed 3 feet of water, an additional 3 feet of water in the top of that ditch that was not present in the bottom of that ditch, that were restricting the flow of stormwater out of those ponds behind his house. And I think Dylan worked with DOT to clean that ditch out, and that water level dropped dramatically when that ditch was cleaned.
Also,
So,
if I recall, when we had something previous, I believe it was Jamie Jarvis's, that's where they had there was a vehicle that's been cleaned out prior to his picture. There was a vehicle back in the back,
Yeah.
and appliances in the ditch in the back where there was a clog. And I know that's been cleaned out.
yeah, the whole outlet has been cleaned out, and there's a study in progress to actually make some improvements to Winslow Pines itself to take some additional water to the east and take it out of the Baxter Lane
Right.
ditch. But also, when Winslow Pines was designed, it was designed for the 10-year storm, and we're now designing for the 100-year storm.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now with regard to public hearing, I had no one else signed up. Was there anyone else?
Ms. Little, did you need to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
anything further? Since I called him up.
Oh, I'm sorry to.
Did you need to step in?
Close it down.
Well, let me finish public hearing piece real quick then. Okay, the public hearing, okay, was there anyone else that wished to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this, and I'll ask the applicant to make a closing statement.
Thank you for your time tonight and all of the questions. We appreciate the citizens' remarks, but it doesn't change the nature of the evidence that was presented before you tonight, which was that we've met our burden under North Carolina law to present competent material and substantial evidence. The evidence that was supplied by experts and required to be supplied as such was provided. We also had Mr. Bissell kind of give us some layperson evidence of his own experience in response to the gentleman's questions. And so under North Carolina law, that discussion that we had about the adjacent property on Baxter Lane does not rise to the level of overcoming the burden of proof that would be required. So if you find that we submitted competent, substantial material evidence for each of the four factors, that you should find that the permit should issue, and the law supports that it should issue, despite concerns about an off-site adjacent property that's not relevant to this case. So with that said, we just respectfully request that the permit be issued tonight and that you vote for approval.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess this requires some action, so I'll ask the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve PB 22-08 Baxter Station preliminary plat special use permit because the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use meets the special use permit review standards of our UDO. And that we include the conditions offered verbally here tonight in testimony and included in our agenda packet under the CMXMR zoning conditions previously approved by this board. The use will not endanger the public health or safety. They are providing stormwater upgrades to deal with that and a 100-year storm implementation. The use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it was located. The use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans in the 2006 land use plan, specifically policy FLU1, policy AG6, cluster or village-like homes, policy HN1, appropriate densities, and the 2014 Millioc Small Area Plan, policy TR2, interconnectivity, and policy IS4 for runoff. And 4, the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide agricultural facilities.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Let's take about a 10-minute recess, and then be back in here to reconvene. Okay, well, we're going to reconvene our regular board meeting, and the next item is new business. And first item is consideration for approval of design proposal for Tullis Creek Elementary School and authorize county manager to execute contracts.
Mr. Chairman, you have in your agenda package a item that was on the last agenda but pulled in order for the board to make a determination as to the size of school that it would like to see at the Tolles Creek Road site. During your work session today, the board discussed and determined that it would like to see the construction of a elementary school at the Tolles Creek Road site that would have a new student capacity of 800 students with a 920 student core. The modification in the proposal that is in your agenda package was set before you this afternoon and should be before you now in the amount of $3,352,470.56 for the design fees, and staff recommends approval of this item so that the project may now proceed forward.
Okay, any questions from the board or comments? Okay, hearing none, we need to take action on that. Ask the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the contracts with an 800 ADM and a 920 core.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item is consideration of an amendment of the Board of Commissioners Rules of Procedures to provide for reading of a conduct of ethics statement at each meeting. And I believe we asked the county manager to do a revision on this to add some verbiage to that. I believe that one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at your last meeting, you discussed in particular the wording for a statement that would be read at the beginning of each meeting with regard to any conflict of interest that a board member believed they might have relative to an item on the agenda that evening. And so what I added, if you look at line number 8 on page 161 of your agenda package, so there's the addition of the following words: a conflict may exist when a commissioner's self-interest will be put ahead of community interest. And then additionally added words are at beginning at line 13. If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any participation in the matter involved. And these are the added words, unless otherwise provided by law. That's, of course, as we've talked about before, there are competing statutes in this area, one of which requires commissioners to vote on all items that come before them unless it impacts or affects their personal finances or is an issue related to their character.
I thought we said that's how we wanted to lead off that section, was the state statute that directs us to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not.
No, it doesn't. We could certainly add that
I
in
think,
there.
Well, I mean, that's what I had thought we were looking to do, is basically establish the state statute requires that we participate unless, and then go into that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wouldn't provided by law cover that?
Well, that's the way I intended it. Certainly, I could redraft it as Commissioner Beaumont and the board to the board's pleasure, and we could put that on the agenda for your continued meeting next Monday. I would certainly circulate it ahead of time for make sure we had the verbiage correct.
That was my understanding. Was that what
right.
the emphasis is that we have to vote.
Right.
Having said that, do you have any conflicts?
Okay.
All right, if you get in and just send it as an email.
I understand what you're looking for now. I did not understand
Okay.
that. I'm sorry before.
That's fine. Just get it on an email. Let's look at it part of Monday, and then we'll
Okay.
just put it on Monday's agenda. Okay.
Certainly.
All right. Okay, so the next item is item D under new business, which is PB 2909 Currituck County Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan. Consider adoption of the future land use plan, Image Image Currituck 2040 Vision Plan. Geez, and I'll turn that over to our planning director, Kevin Kemp.
All right, thank you, Chairman. After a long and tenuous process, I'm very happy to bring Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan before you tonight. As I described in an email last week, this before you tonight is the current draft of the plan. You will be seeing a more finalized draft in the coming months, which I will touch on a little bit later. After we get our comments back from the Department of Coastal Management, but I'm here to bring forth the current draft. I just wanted to touch briefly on why we need a land use plan. So, of course, we're one of the 20 coastal communities in the state, and CAMA requires us to have a plan. That being said, just being required to have a plan is the only reason it's a good idea to have one. As you know, Currituck County is experiencing strong population growth, changing demographic, and therefore it's really important for the county to look forward and set a good plan in place to how we want to grow, how we want to develop, to build on what we have had in the 2006 land use plan, but then to curb that to where we want to go and what we're experiencing now. So we will be able to provide a strategic direction while preserving the heritage and the past of the county. I wanted to briefly talk about where this plan has been. There's been four really processes of the plan. The first was March to July of 2016. So it goes back almost 6 years. Started with the research and analysis, which is where we developed a public engagement strategy and we developed the website. We then moved on to the public engagement and visioning from June to November of 16. We promoted an online survey, conducted workshops. All being told, we reached out and had just about 1,800 survey responses, had 7 public workshops, and reached 28,000 people on Facebook. So when you look at something in our planning realm, that was very well received. We got a lot of great feedback and touched a lot of people. So a lot of hands, a lot of communities played a part in this. We then developed the plan between October 2016 and October 2017. In that time, we presented the plan to the public and to the board, such as yourself, several times. Now we're in the last phase, which is plan adoption. We sent this plan you're seeing here, we sent it to DCM in 2019. They sent us back an extensive list of comments. After going through those, which took some time, it took a effort from staff across the entire county, many different departments. We sent a draft back in March of 22. We are now waiting for that draft to come back. It is taking a little longer than we expected. I had hoped to get the finalized draft before you before the end of the summer, but with that holdup, it might be a few months longer than I had hoped. Right now, where it is, as I said, it's in the DCM office in Elizabeth City. Once it is reviewed by them, they will send it to other applicable state and federal agencies. Jenny was nice enough to track down a list of who reviews it. There's about 15 agencies that'll take a look at it. Some more detailed than others, but everything from the NCDOT, Army Corps of Engineers, shellfish sanitation, the list goes on and on. I'm happy to provide it for you if you want to read it in detail, but that should take anywhere from 30, but probably closer to 45 days, and then we'll get the comments back. When we get the comments back, we'll be able to make any minor changes and then bring forward that finalized copy to you. So you might ask, if we're eventually going to bring back a more finalized copy of this plan, why are we bringing this draft, the current draft, for you today? It's a good question, and it bases on North Carolina General Statute 160D, which talks about how if a locality does not have a reasonably maintained and up-to-date land use or comprehensive plan in place by July 1st, 2022, it may impact the county's ability to enforce its zoning laws. As you can imagine, first of all, it is reasonable to think that our land use plan being 16 years old wouldn't be considered reasonably maintained. It is also important to know that zoning laws, they matter. So it's not to say that, the county every commercial property would have an undesirable use if this didn't go through. But what it would do is if a developer brought a project forward, the county wouldn't be able to limit that development based on our zoning laws. So moving forward, in order to have a reasonably maintained plan, you would adopt the current draft of the plan this evening. The planning board reviewed this plan and recommended approval in their June 14th meeting. That followed 2 workshops that were held where we went over the plan. Some great conversations were had. It was not only just for the planning board and learning how to work with the plan, but it was also a good refresher for staff to really get involved. Once the comments come back from DCM, we'll have a minimum of a 30-day public input period, and then it'll come back before you. When you vote on the finalized version, it can then be a certified land use plan. So I would just like to end by thanking you, the board, county manager, for all your support through this effort. Staff thinks we have a great plan. A lot of hard work went into it. And I would be remiss to say, if I didn't say thank you to Lori LaCicero, who put in a ton of hard work on this plan, and to Jenny Turner, who has come in and really got this thing going and has taken the lead on this. And I am confident she will get it across the finish line, and we will have a great land use plan. So I'll stand by for any questions.
So the board will take action on this tonight, and then we
Yes.
will take action on adoption of a revised one when it's ready.
Correct. When you adopt this, this will replace the 2006 land use plan. And this is what we will use until then. And then when the finalized plan comes through with the minor changes that will be suggested from that long list of agencies, you will get another chance to review it at that point.
Okay, any questions from the board at this time?
I have one for Commissioner Jarvis.
Oh, yes, sir, go ahead.
Are you ready to adopt this?
I am so ready.
Well, then.
And I will make that motion.
Okay.
I was
I'll
waiting for
second it.
Mr. Kemp to finish.
I'll second that, Mr.
We
Chairman.
need to have a public hearing first, Mr. Chairman, so.
Oh, okay, hold on, okay, yes, oh, that's,
All right,
okay. I guess public comment period right now?
Public hearing. So you just want to open a public hearing?
Okay, well then, at this time, I'm going to open a public hearing. And would anyone like to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll ask the board for some action.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve the Imagine Currituck land use plan.
Have a motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next item is board appointments. We have a bunch of, I guess, board appointments due, and I didn't know if,
I'll be happy to,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good.
If the board's confident with it, I'll just read them all in as a slate, and we'll go from there. On the ABC board, we have Chris Bell for Animal Services, Brenda Parrish, Donna Corbo, and Michael Shannon. On Fire and EMS, Tim Bostaff, Ed Yamolkowski, Bradley Anton New. On the Game Commission, Mike Cason, Land Transfer and Tax Appeals.
Missed one on Game Commission, Janet Rose Ross.
Did I miss Janet Rose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Janet
And Miss
Rose
Janet Rose.
Ross, Janet
Ross.
Rose Ross.
Ross, sorry. My hearing's not what it used to be.
It's okay, it's okay.
Thought I got them all. Land Transfer Tax Appeals, Richard Williams, Carl Wolf Jr., Manley West, Jerry Forbes, John Messina, and I have Chris Bell. Is it the same Chris Bell? Is the ABC board? Yes. They can serve on the
ABC board.
Okay. All right. Ocean Sands and North Crown Point. Robert Peters, Terry Anderson, Charles Winslow, and Joseph Cassidy. On senior citizens, Roberta Deffenbaugh. And lastly, on wellhead stormwater, Mr. George Mears.
Okay, so that's, well, I guess we had a motion to adopt all those.
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion on it?
I would like to say on my senior, for the Senior Citizens Advisory Board, I spoke to Stacy from the Senior Center. And I have an appointment, which I'm replacing somebody that resigned. I don't want to do that until July, so I'll submit
Okay, we'll
that
do that
to you.
later, yes.
I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, so a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Just quietly over
No one
there.
snuck in there.
Snuck that second in.
All right, next item is the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, I am going to, at this time, just recess our regular meeting until 6 p.m. on Monday, June 24th, I believe that's correct? 27th, I'm sorry. Is that right?
We do have a closed session, so you may want to wait till after that for your
Okay, hold on then, okay.
regular meeting.
All right. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and recess from our and move into the special meeting for the Tourism Development Authority for consideration for approval of event grant award recommendations. Do we have a,
Chairman, Chair.
Cameron, did you want to, are you good, or, I mean, any questions regarding that? Okay, I'll move for approval.
So moved.
Okay, over a second?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the budget's going to be, okay, and I'll ask for motion to adjourn from the TDA.
So moved.
Second, from Mr. Beaumont here. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we don't need to, okay, we have no items in the ocean sands. So, at this time, I'll go ahead and move into closed session and pursuant to GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with the county attorney and preserve the county attorney privilege in the matter entitled Heirs versus Currituck County Department of Social Services.